Okay, so lab, if you look at it, let me get to the right course. 518. Lab 4. Text. I'm actually not going to, just decided this, I'm not going to run through this week's lab, okay, because I want you to do that. But what I'm going to do instead is basically just redo what I just did as a raster function chain. And we can do it fairly quickly because the data will be the same. And then this really is the same process that we're going to do right now, but with different data, okay? So you're going to run this on some data for Europe. And this shows you, this basically walks you through that process and has you answer questions along the way. You're still going to do some reclassifies, and at the end you're going to create this. This is a raster function chain. What's cool about raster function chains is that you're creating this whether you know you're creating it or not. Whereas in Model Builder, you have to remember all the steps that you did, like write them down and diagram them out, and then rerun it. Whereas a raster function chain, they're all, when it's stored, so every data set, it knows all of the other data sets and processes that were used to create it. And so for example, if we go back here, we created this least cost path. We created that through a raster function. If I right click on it and I say edit function chain, it shows me the process that was used to create it. Now it was not really a chain right now. It's just one raster function. So this data set, it knows that it was created. Let's stay over here. This data set right here, it knows that it was created by using these other data sets. If I click on them, I can see what data set was used. It's the source raster data set, and this one is the destination raster data set, and this one is the overall cost data set. Yours is? Now, are you sure that you're clicking on the one that you created using the raster function chain, or are you clicking on the one that you created in Model Builder? Okay. But what I'm trying to say is this is also the least cost path. If I right click on that, there's no edit function chain because I created this through geoprocessing. I made this at the very end, just before we took the break. And it was made by going to, if I go to analysis and I click on tools, I'll get to the geoprocessing tools. If I go to raster functions and I click this, then I'll get to the raster functions. If I delete everything, here's all the raster functions that exist. And under distance are the raster functions for distance, and I ran this one right here called least cost path. I'm sure that ESRI is using the same code in their system. I mean, maybe they're not, but it's still doing something slightly different. This is creating a new file on disk. This is making a virtual file in memory when you run it as a raster function. Okay? So this little raster function chain, it's not really a chain because there's nothing chained together, but they're calling it a function chain because it knows that it was created that way. So let's, instead of creating everything through geoprocessing, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new map. And we're going to do the same thing that we did there. Can I copy things over? Elevation. I want to copy over elevation, and I want to copy over, actually, I'm going to use land cover But before I copy over land cover, I'm going to create a copy of land cover at the right resolution. Because once you start using the raster function chain, it should all be in the same resolution and have the extent you want. Because like I just mentioned, I don't know if everybody on the coast heard, but it comes more from an image processing background, and so it's assuming that you're looking at different realizations of the same image, like maybe different bands of the same image. That's how it kind of got started, but now it's grown, and it actually has most of these tools that are available in Model Builder. Okay. By the way, in 2 weeks we're going to do flow accumulation. It's here. It's kind of cool. Okay, so for land cover, because my two inputs, the only inputs I had, almost the only inputs I had. I'm also going to take out, I'm going to take the destination raster and throw it over there. And I'm going to take the source raster. Take this destination raster. Why doesn't that go over there? Maybe if I'm going to highlight both of these, destination and source, and say copy. And then I'm going to go over to map 1 and say Control V. Thank you, that worked. Good. So anyway, you could also just add them from your data set. So now I have my destination raster. Should be right there, yep. My source raster should be down there. And I have the elevation data set. And finally, the only other data set that I want to start with is I want to go to my map data set, and I want to take the elevation data set, but I want to make a copy. So here is, I right-click on land cover and I say export data, and it opens up the geoprocessing tool for exporting that data set. Now, what I want to do is, change the cell size. Can I do that? I can change the snap raster there. Okay, cell size, where's that? Cell size, right there. But I can't choose the existing one. Well, my guess is if I choose 2 and 2 here, and I make this, if I go into the settings and I make the snap raster elevation, that's gonna do it. Because the extent's already, the extent's already the same, so I don't think I need to choose that. So I changed elevation here, and I changed these values to 2 and 2. I'd like it better if I could just choose the value that I wanted. Where's it going to put it? It's going to put it in land cover tip. I actually want to put it in my the same database I've been working in. So I'm going to put it in this data set. I'm going to call it land cover small or something, or I guess that's just as good as anything. Stands for small cell size. So if I hit export here, let's see what happens. Okay, so that's the output, and I'm going to put that output data set into the map. Let's look at the properties here real quick. So I just want to make sure that it actually got the 2 by 2. Yeah, the cell size is 2. Okay. I'm going to make sure the corners align. It looks like they don't, but as long as the cells themselves align. It also doesn't look like those align. Yeah, they do. So they line up right on that. It's hard to see, but they line up right on that line. So it's okay that they're a little bit off. because the cells line up perfectly. The cells themselves line up perfectly. The corner, it doesn't matter so much as long as the cells line up perfectly. Okay, so now we're ready. We have our 4 inputs. I'm going to maybe arrange them a little bit better. So I've got elevation, land cover, the source, and the destination. All right, so now we're going to run the exact same model. Okay. So what was the first thing that we did? We made costs, right? How did we make the costs? Yes, we reclassified both the land cover and we reclassified the elevation. We reclassified slope. So I'm going to close this up. Close this up. Okay. Go back if you want to go back to analysis, raster functions. You'll get here. So I'm going to reclassify land cover. So the raster function chain is actually called remap. It's not called reclassify. There's several of these tools that are called different things as a raster function chain. So I'm going to open it as a raster function chain, and you have to choose the raster that you want. Okay. Yeah. You have raster functions turned off? Oh. In your raster function chain list? You see it? No, it's not in GeoProcessing. That's, sorry, raster functions. It's a whole separate thing. So GeoProcessing and raster function chains are 2 totally different things. Raster function chains is new. Okay. GeoProcessing has been around since ArcGIS 10.1 pretty much. Well, they've had something called GeoProcessing, but Model Builder has been around since 10 or 10.1. Okay. All right, so here, once we choose the land cover data set, we can then put our remap function here. Now, unfortunately, let's see if this will work. Yeah, remap table. That's not going to work. List. We're going to have to find out what those values were. So we have to open up this attribute table, and we have to find out what all these values were that went to everything. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. Those were all the data. Oh, sorry, that's the value. So it's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those 2, 3, 4, and 5, we want to make all of those. Do you remember what we did? Those were 10, okay. Just to be safe, because I'm not as familiar with raster function chains yet, I'm going to put in 0 and go to 5.5 so that it will make sure to include everything that I want it to include, because I don't know if it's inclusive of 5 or not. If this was a continuous data set, it wouldn't really matter, because who cares if it's going to cut it at 5 or 5.0000001 or 4.9999999. It doesn't really matter. It's rounding error. But here, when we're talking about land cover data sets, I want to make sure it includes all of 5. I could probably go read in the help, but if I do this, say 0 to 5, I'll definitely get it, because 5.5 is bigger than 5. So I'm going to do the same thing here. We did 6 and 8, so I'm going to go 5.5 all the way to, what is it, 8.5. Those were, what did we say? Did we say 2? Was that right? 10, 2, and 5? I think that was right. So now I can add my last ones. So basically anything above 8. So I'll just go 8.5 all the way to 100. then I'll get to, those will be 5. So once it looks like this, you should be set. Okay? We're just basically doing the same reclassify that we did the first time, but we've got those values, and we didn't get the table here. Okay? Raster function chains don't really work with tables really well. I mean attribute tables. By choosing table here, we're actually, it's expecting that we input tabular values. It's a different type of thing. All right, so now I hit create new layer, and it's going to run pretty rapidly, and it's going to put it. The raster function chain, because of this image processing origins, always makes everything a continuous symbol, stretches it. So if we want to change that, we just go into symbology and change it. So we can change it to unique values, and we'll be all set. Yeah. It's just asking us. So now we have those 3 different costs associated with them. In fact, that might not be the best thing to do. We're talking about we're talking about cost here. I'm going to leave it on unique values though, just because we could do something like this where we make the costs. Well, actually, I should probably reverse those, but you get the idea. Well, you can do either one. You were working inside the template. Yeah, and that's fine. I think it's just what's nice about what I'm trying to show you right now is what's nice about raster functions is the first time through you build the process, you get the result you want, then you can see how it was created in Model Builder, and you could tweak something. Not Model Builder. You could see it in the function chain. Yeah, that's what I like about it. Okay, so I've just run it once, and I think I am going to change this, because this would be low, medium, high. It's just for fun. So the highest costs are red. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we've created that one. The other thing is that you can change the names of these as you go along. I didn't do it in the lab, okay, but if you want, you could call this land cost. So now that will be, it'll be easier to see in the raster function chain if you do something like that. Remember, it doesn't exist on disk, so you don't have to change the name on disk. You just change it right there. By the way, I'm going to hit save, just in case everything dies sometime. All right, so let's go back to raster functions. And we do want to reclassify slope, but before we even get there, we need to run slope. And so slope is a tool. So this time we want to choose elevation and leave this a degree. We'll be fine. So we'll just hit create new layer. See how fast it created it really fast? It doesn't have to write anything out on disk. It's just there. And do you guys care about seeing this a little bit better? You want me to turn the lights on? You just got it on this. And then you can be able to see the recording later. Just the sun is getting to the point where it's right there. Okay, so we created the slope elevation data set. Now that's not slope cost, that's just the slope data set. So now, what's the next step to create slope cost? If we're going to do it the same way we did before. How did we calculate slope cost before? Remember, I just kind of like pulled those arbitrary numbers out, but what tool did I run? We will remap it again. I ran reclassify, but in a raster function chain, it's called remap. So we're going to take our slope data called slope underscore elevation. If we wanted to rename it, we just call it slope. All right, now here, if I remember correctly, I went 0 to 5, and I made that 1, because it was really fine. And then I did 5 to 15. I know I'll do a few more of these, because I'll remember them as I get on. 15 to 30 was 8, I believe. And then 30 to 45, was that like 10? We can go look here in just a second. 45 to 90 was definitely 20. Okay, let's go look at my slope cost before. Here's my slope cost: 1, 5, 8, 10, and 20. So I did 1. Man, I'm surprised that my old person memory got those. 1, 5, 8, 10, and 20. I did it right. Okay, so now notice there's no place to call anything because we're not actually saving anything out on disk. So if I hit create new layer again, by default it just kind of builds them. Remap, slope, elevation. That's the reason that it does that by default is this. The way that we got this is we took our original data set, we ran slope, then we ran remap. But I'm going to rename it and call it slope cost. Oops. Slope cost. And I'm going to take slope cost and make it unique values again. Yeah. It's just asking me if I want to compute all the unique values. Okay, so here with the low cost, yellow, light orange, darker orange, red, dark red. These don't have any value on, these don't have any effect on the final product. I just want to make them an appropriate color range. So that's slope cost, that's land cost. All right? Now, at any point along this process, I just close the attribute table. I can right-click on this slope cost layer and look at the function chain that was used to create it. So here, I had the elevation data set, I ran slope, and then I ran remap to get this data set. It's pretty cool. Okay, we haven't really combined anything yet, but we're going to do that now, right? So we ran the tool called plus, right, to add slope cost to land cost. Let's see if there's a similar function. I don't know if there is, but just type plus. Yep, there is. There's actually a similar function. There's also one called arithmetic. You can use either one. Arithmetic makes you specify whether you're add, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, whereas plus assumes that you're adding because that's what it is. So we're going to add slope cost to what? Land cost. All right? Now, what I said before, it's nice to put everything in the right extent and everything. You actually can change those values right here. We could have chosen min of, which is the same thing we did in Model Builder. And we could have chosen the intersection. We could have chosen union or whatnot. But now that we handle it, we don't have to deal with it again here. Okay. It probably means that one of the things isn't hooked up. Usually that's what it means, like one of the inputs isn't hooked up. I'm going to hit create layer, I'll walk over there. So now this layer should look familiar, it's not colorized the same way. But that is actually, looks to me like it's really similar to the layer that we just made before. So what's happening? Oh, a raster function chain can only have one output. So right now, if you try to run it, it won't work. So the output is assumed. And so right now, this is an output and that's an output. Okay. Now, if you double click on these guys, what is this? Like, does this actually give you a path? Okay. Line cover 2, and that's elevation. I'm pretty sure that's the problem. It's not valid because when it tries to run, it doesn't add those together. All right, so if I want this to look like the data set that we created earlier, or the symbology that we created earlier, all I have to do is drop down and choose the yellow to red that I chose before. In fact, because I changed it last time. Yellow to red. Now that looks just like this overall cost data set from before. Too much stuff on. I don't even know what's this one. Okay. That looks just like that, except for I'm zoomed in slightly differently, but that output should be the same. Okay. And if I right click on this plus slope cost, land cost, which is, by the way, annoying, so I'm going to rename it. I just need to rerun it, sorry. Slope cost, land cost. I accidentally hit remove is what I did. Not a big deal. Just annoying. Okay. This one, and then right click, rename. You're trying to make me remove it again? Okay, so this is going to be overall cost. So you might ask, why is this any different than what we just did before? Well, right click and say edit function chain, and now you can see the function chain is starting to get more and more complex. Okay? So we could continue this out. We're almost done, right? What else do we need? We got the overall cost. I think all we need to do is run the least cost path model, right? And that is already in there. I already showed that. So that's least cost path. So we just need to find out what the inputs are. The inputs here are going to be source. Source is going to be source. Destination is going to be destination. Good thing we named those something that's easy to remember. Destination raster. The destination field is, we can leave that. That's just, if we had multiple destinations, same as before. The cost raster is going to be the overall cost. And remember, we can change this to each zone, which I think would be better in a real scenario, but it doesn't matter to us because we only have one. And then hit create new layer. Now this one does take a few seconds to run, but it should create the exact same cost path. Now here, you do not have the option, it does, see it created it, you do not have the option to create a vector path. So if you want to create a vector path, you actually have to run the geoprocessing tool. You were saying that it died on you. So I'm going to say raster to polyline. And then choose this one. And the background value is no data. I'm going to call this LB path. It wasn't saved out to disk. Well, mine let me do it. Okay, so it's working on that computer. I don't know. I'm not sure why yours didn't work. A point to a little raster? We used point to raster or feature to raster. I used feature to raster. Yep. But then I had to make sure in environments that I chose the all the information. Okay, so it runs. Now, if we go into edit function chain down here, see I've got this function chain that I just ran. If I decide, for example, oh, by the way, I'm going to delete this LB path. If I decide, for example, after I show this to somebody, that they might, it's hard to see the path. I'm trying to, yeah, that's, anyway. If I decide after that they decide, well, you know, developed is like really expensive to get into. We don't want developed to get chosen if we can avoid it at all. So we might want to make the cost for develop even higher. In which case I could come in to this this remap of the land cover and make the things that were developed, I can make them have a value like 25, really, really expensive. Say, okay. So I modified the raster function chain that was used to create that, that least cost path, and then I could rerun it. And now it's hard to see on there, but it went up here, way up here, and came over. Okay.
What is the 1 and the 3 values of that least cost path later? The one that we just created.
Yeah. Well, it does that whether we're doing geoprocessing or not, right? So there. Yeah, it looks like 1 is the source itself, and 3 is the path. I'm not sure why they chose those numbers as the numbers, but those are the 2 values in the raster value. So 3 is the path itself, and 1 is the location, the zone. I do think that 3 number changes, like depending on, it's basically like 2 higher than the highest number that's already there, and 1 is the code for your source, whatever your source was coded. See what I mean here? Like if we look at the source raster, there's a 1 that's already there. And so if you have multiple sources, source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4, source 5, the path itself will be numbered above any of those. Why is that? Your new one does. Does it do the same thing as mine? Let's see. Now, why would that be weird? Well, yeah, I think it was coded. Let's see what it's trying to turn the right layer off here to see what it was coded. So that's this area right through here, the high school, right? I'm pretty sure that's it. I don't have the imagery pulled up. It's easiest to see in the slope, the high school. Wait, where is the slope? Is this the high school right here? Yeah, so something in the high school area was coded open or something like that, which had a lower cost associated with it. Yeah. 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 So, I'll show you how you can get to there. Right, so there's no run. So what you can do, yes, you say, did you save it? You've already saved it, right? What did you save it as? Okay. So now if you go to the raster functions right here, you go to custom or the project? Yeah, that's the one that you just created. Now try to run that. Yeah, it's right there. Okay, so what Forrest did was kind of interesting. So if any of you have used Model Builder before, you could have actually built this yourself, right? But if you built it yourself, you couldn't, there wouldn't be a run button because there's no layer that already exists for it. So what you would have to do is you would then go, oh, that's what you would do. You right click here and say, instead of just edit function chain, I thought it was right there. There is a way to save a function chain. I did edit function chain, right? Validate, run. There is a way to save it out. To save out one, I guess you just go save function chain. Yeah, that works. So if you hit save function chain, that's it. That's what I was thinking of. If you right click on a function that's been that you've created, you can hit save function chain, and then it's called this raster function chain template 1. And as soon as you hit save, it'll save it with that name. If you don't like that name, then you can either change it in properties, which is, where's the properties? Oh, the properties are right here. Edit the properties. So we could rename that. We could call that, LB least cost path. And say OK. And then now when I hit save, I'll say OK, and it shows up under custom. So now that I've got LB least cost path, and I can click on it and run it, and it will create a new layer. Oh yeah. So you do have to re-specify all these rasters for some reason. You have to specify which ones they are for it to run. You can. I'm not going to go over that right now. Maybe we'll do that in another lab. But you can establish which ones are your parameters.
But I mean, like, you can build like a tool where you select the parameters each time you run it.
Yes. Yeah, but go through the help on that for now, but for now, just do it like I did it. And what the lab's going to do is it's going to have the defaults that you choose in the lab are going to choose a certain route from Copenhagen to Venice. And you're going to have to modify the parameters so that, because it's going to choose a mostly overland route, so you're going to modify the parameters so you choose a mostly water route. Okay, so it's the same exercise, but you're going to do it for a much larger area and much larger cell size. So You're going to get a very similar raster function chain, though, right here. So I don't show you a lot of the outputs, but I show you what each of the inputs are. So we've got our land cover data set. We're going to code it. We're going to remap it. Then we're going to do a few more data manipulation things in there. So we've got some data that needs to be changed to null. This is what the final output's going to look. I mean, this is what the final raster function chain is going to look like. It's going to look like that. So we're going to take the land cover data set and we're going to remap it, and then we've got three costs with this data set. One cost is just the land cover cost, the cost to travel across the land. We've got another cost that's associated with converting from traveling over land to traveling on water. So what I did there, the lab walks you through it, is that we just coded everything that's land one value and everything that's water another value, and ran a neighborhood operation. We found the minimum value and the maximum value, and we subtracted the two, and what you get is just the edge. It's an edge detection algorithm. The edge between land and water are selected. Okay. And then finally, the other cost is the elevation cost. This time, I just made the slope cost the slope times 0.5. So half the slope counted as the cost. So that's how I did it. Least cost path. It's the same basic process, but you're going to walk through it in the lab, and then you need to turn in the answers to the questions. Plus, oh, this isn't it. Oh, this is already open. Okay, so you need to turn the answer to the questions, and then you need to turn in a map of the original overland route that it chooses. You need to turn in a map of one that goes around through Gibraltar by tweaking the parameters. And then you need to report the total cost of each of the routes. By the way, it's in the attribute table. Here, watch this. I'll do it right now. So you right-click on the least cost path, and you say Open Attribute Table, and it's there. So here is the path cost. That's the total cost to traverse that path. Finally, there's a question that says, okay, well, what if that wasn't in the attribute table? How could you get that? And that's, you need to answer that question. How could you arrive at that information? Remembering that that path is the accumulated cost of traversing all of the cost raster. So you take the cost raster data set. How would you come up with the sum of everything that was below the path? How would you do that? That's the answer to the question. Okay? All right? But it's the same way you would calculate the sum of a polygon or a point. Okay? So we talked about it last week. Another thing. So think about the basic operation type. One of these you could use to get the value. Okay. It doesn't really matter that it's a line at this point. That's another hint, right? Okay, whatever it is, you want to get the total value from another raster, from everything that has a certain value in another raster. How would you do it? Okay. All right. So this thing looks like it worked this time. Anybody have any questions before I stop the video? Questions you want on record? All right. Yeah.
When you save the function
Yeah, I do think that it lets you choose. Let's see. It will just bring it back up if you save it in the project. So it saves it with the project, but I'm not sure if it saves a separate template or not. Yeah, it is an XML file. If I go to edit, yeah, it saves it somewhere. Oh, here's the properties. Let's see if I can. Right, it shows up in the custom section. In fact, where was it? Well, I know when I first save it, I don't know why it disappeared, but you can actually put it in a subcategory under. In fact, you can put it in a different category. Check that out. So you could put it in project. You put it in project or custom. So you can't put it in one of the ESRI categories. But then you could put it in a custom subcategory. I mean, a subcategory within inside of custom. You can name it like least cost path or whatnot. And you can go through and find out what the there is a way to do model builder type behavior where you actually specify which of the input rasters that you want. And we can go over that sometime as well. All right. So save that guy. So raster function chains are kind of cool. They're new, and they let you do. I think they have a lot of the cool things about Model Builder, but probably are more suited for things that can run fairly quickly. Like if you have a really complicated thing, it's probably not the best tool because everything is done in memory. Also, not everything is duplicated yet. So there are plenty of tools. Like you can't do a very complex raster calculator expression. You could do a raster calculator expression, but you have to do each individual tool. Of course, those were never really that fun to do inside of Model Builder either. All right, I'll close the slide, close the presentation.